Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It is 12 p.m. here in Toronto, where I am, and I am thrilled to be doing this, and grateful to everybody who has joined or is going to join. It's a very exciting topic, reinventing your career. This is something that is very personal to me, as I've just finished medical school, transitioned from banking. So I'm going to keep this as interactive as possible. I'll try to be as practical and pragmatic as possible. Hopefully offer some tips and suggestions to people who are thinking about reinventing their own careers. So keep typing your questions and your comments. I can see them and I will answer them as we go along. That's the whole point of a live conversation, is to really bring up that engagement and interaction with all of you. I'm going to give it maybe another minute or so before we get started, just so that people can tune in and join. And if people, as you show up, if you could just say hi, type something in the comments, maybe even say where you're joining from, or where you're based. That would be really great for me to see as well. All right, I think we can get started. So, like I said, today's topic, and there will be many more topics. I will be doing these regularly. Hello, Zoha. Thank you for saying hi. Hi, Uzma. Thanks for saying hi. Yeah, we'll keep conversations going. I've missed doing these. I have really enjoyed doing regular LinkedIn lives in the past. So we're going to resume these and try to keep this going at least every week or every couple weeks. So today's topic is about our careers. So we live in a world where things are changing all the time, right? Things are changing, things are evolving, we're changing, and we're evolving as we grow in our lives. So maybe something did not seem very interesting to us earlier on in life, but now suddenly we've developed an interest. We've gone through an experience that sparked some curiosity in us. We have discovered a new purpose, a new why. And when I talk about why, what is your why? What is your purpose? I don't mean this one purpose that you might have and you will discover it and you have to monetize it and you have to leave a legacy behind when you pass away. We're always discovering our purposes. We're always finding new whys and new ways of bringing joy into our lives and meaning into our lives. So when I talk about purpose, I mean, what is it that brings you joy? What is it that brings you meaning? What is something that, a difference that you want to make, something that you want to contribute to? Perhaps it's just about doing something meaningful in your work. Sometimes it's about volunteering. Sometimes it's about taking up a new hobby. So we're always constantly discovering our whys, and we're always evolving. We're always changing. We are rediscovering ourselves. So oftentimes, though, we live in this world where we are somehow tied to this idea that we have to find our career at a very young age. So, in our early 20s, we have to decide what we want to do for the rest of our lives. And right now, my daughters are 22 and 17, and I have these conversations with them all the time because they're going through this. They're like, Mom, I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I said, you don't have to know what you want to do for the rest of your life, because you don't know what you will be like for the rest of your life. You're going to constantly change. You're going to evolve. You're going to discover new passions. You're going to learn new things. So life is very dynamic. And so are our careers, or they can be. So I find this idea that you have to find the one thing that you're going to do forever. And you have to find that from a very young age. And then you have to put all of your efforts into it and get that degree and start that career. And that's it. and then just keep growing the ladder, or just keep climbing the ladder, just keep growing that, even if you're unhappy, even if you don't like it, even if you like it but you discover something you like even more than that, right? And that kind of idea, I think it's very outdated, and it's rooted in a lot of these ideas that we as human beings are somehow static, that we have this assembly line kind of a life, and my life has been nothing like that. I've always reinvented myself personally and professionally. And when I discovered something that I was interested in much more than what I was doing and what my career was, I knew that it was time to make a change. So I'll talk a little bit about that journey of why I did what I did, and then I'm going to talk about some of the tips and strategies that I've learned along the way, things that I had to consider, which might be on your mind. And I'm going to constantly be looking at the comments box as well for any kind of questions and things that arise. So please keep typing as we go along. All right, so let's get started. When I decided, why did I decide to change my career? So this happened about, I would say, 3 years ago, in 2020. Yeah, 2020. So for almost 3.5 or 4 years ago, we were going through COVID, and I was already in the midst of really deciding what I wanted to do in terms of my career. So on one hand, I was working in banking, and I loved that career. I learned a lot from my leaders. I did well in my job. I liked my clients. I liked my colleagues. I made friends. However, there was something always sort of, gnawing at me, that there is something else that I'm interested in, and I couldn't really put a finger on it at that time. I was very passionate about mental health. I've always been very passionate about mental health. Human experiences and behaviors and emotions is something that I'm always curious about. I just want to learn more about people. How do people do what they do? Why do they feel the way they feel? How do they come out from identical circumstances in such different ways? What is it in us, in our brains, in our psyche, in our emotions, in the blueprint, the way we look at life? How do we differ, and how are we overlapping? How are we the same as well? So that is something that I've always been drawn to. So I was always, in my free time, even when I was working in banking, I was constantly reading books about human experiences, psychology books, etc. And then in those years as well, so around 2017 to 2020, I went through something personal with my own children, where I was then on the other side of receiving mental health care for my kids. And as I was supporting them through their journey, my daughter went through some challenges, and I do have her permission to talk about it. So as I was supporting my kids and I was advocating for their needs with their doctors and their psychiatrists, I learned, that there is so much more to this that I can do and that I'm interested in. So I started reading more books, and I started informing myself more so I could talk to their doctors more intelligently. And that lived experience, plus that curiosity and that interest in the field, gave me this very unique perspective that if I could combine that lived experience that I have, life lessons that I've learned along the way in my own journey. Some of you may know my story. I'm a survivor of abuse. I've lived through trauma. So that journey of my own healing, plus being a parent, so my personal journey plus my parenting journey, and if I could take that and the life lessons and combine that with knowledge and expertise and training, and then use that to make an even bigger difference in the lives of people that I serve, whether it's as a speaker or an author or physician or a leader or a colleague, I just felt a calling deep inside of me. And I can't even describe it in any other way. It was like this feeling inside that this is something I really want to do. This is something I really want to contribute to. So I decided in 2020 to take a shot at it, to just try. Because if you don't try, you never know. and you miss all the shots you don't take. So I decided to take a shot at it, and I decided to apply to medical school. Now, when I decided to apply, it was already pretty late in the game. I decided in September 2020, and applications were due on October 1st, 2020. So I scrambled to get everything together and submit all my reference letters and get my GPA and do my MCAT and all that kind of stuff. And eventually was able to get to the stage of interviews and luckily got in, which I'm incredibly grateful for. In fact, at that time, I wasn't thinking I'm actually going to get in, but I did. And I knew that it was almost like a new path opening up, and I had to just take it and run with it. That does not mean, I know this so far, it sounds like, wow, this is great. This was meant to be. This was, something that just kind of happened naturally. There were so many things that I had to consider and factor in as that was happening. So for one thing, I'm a mother. I am a single mother. I am a sole support parent. I am the sole breadwinner of my family. So the sacrifice of leaving a job that pays well, going to school where I'm going to accumulate a significant amount of debt in student loans, and then eventually start to work again, pay off the debts. So this entire journey, and as you all know, medicine is not a short career. It's not a short training. It takes a long time. So I'm going into psychiatry. So that's 3 years of med school. And because McMaster is an accelerated program, so 3 years of med school plus 5 years of residency. So 8 years at least, right, before I reach my peak earning potential. So that was a huge consideration. Secondly, time. Medicine demands a lot out of us. And that is time away from my children. That is time away from things that I want to do, fun that I want to have, traveling. Some of you who may know me know how much I love to travel, and I haven't been able to travel much at all in the last 3 years of going through medical school. So there are sacrifices that we have to make. And at that point, it's a very personal decision. Like, are these sacrifices worth it to what I want to do? Do I want it bad enough? Does it make sense? And it's not just about wanting. There's something that, yes, you want something. And I'm a big believer in, if you want to achieve something, go for it. At the same time, we also have to be pragmatic and practical about it. So I would not do something that would put my children in jeopardy or their welfare in jeopardy, no matter how much I want something. If I want to go and travel for a year, I'm not going to do that because my children are dependent on me. So it took a lot of conversations with me and my daughters to, is this feasible? And something that my daughters at that point said to me, because, I was like, and we've been through a lot as a family already. So a conversation that I had with them was, I got into medical school, but does this even make sense? Because, we just became stable in our lives. We've had a pretty traumatic life. So we are now finally stable. We have a home. We are stable in our lives and my career. And now I'm going to go back to school and rock the boat all over again. Is that a good idea? And something that my younger daughter said to me at that time was, Mom, by teaching us, by doing this, by showing us how to do this, you're actually teaching and showing us that it's never too late to go after our dreams. And something that my younger daughter said to me was really eye-opening. She said, Mom, I'm in high school right now, and I am surrounded by these messages that I have to figure out what I want to do. I have to find my career, and I have to do that for the rest of my life. And I'm not ready for that. And you changing your career in your 30s shows me that, no, I don't have to have it all figured out right now. So it relieves so much pressure. So that was one thing. And then we had a lot of discussions about practical things. Okay, how are we going to do this? Like, we have to share responsibilities. We have to make sure we're all, pitching in. I'm not going to have a regular cleaning lady anymore because I can't afford that. So we have to all do our share at home. So a lot of those practical decisions also came into play. And that's when I decided to go for it and make the leap. Secondly, apart from finances, there's obviously the interest. Like, do you Are you interested in this new field, in this new career that you want to embark on? Are you interested in it enough to take it up as a career? Or is it more of a curiosity and interest that you can take it up as a hobby and still feel fulfilled? So that is something I went through quite a bit, because I was speaking and advocating for mental health as a speaker for years, and a writer. And I've already been working on my second book that is very much rooted in a lot of mental health education. So I was bringing in a lot, I was making a difference, quite a lot already. So why wasn't that enough? I could have kept it going. I could have still been involved in that space and kept speaking and kept writing while working in banking, and it was working so far. So, but at some point for me personally, that interest became much more than just doing it on the side as a side hustle. Like, it became like this deeper calling of like, no, I want to actually do this full time. I'm prepared to go through years and years of schooling and training and be an expert in the field. This is how much I love it. This is how much I'm curious about it. This is how much interested I am in it. And that is, again, a very personal decision, because there will be things we'll be interested in. I'm interested in a lot of things, right? And this is something that in my undergraduate degree was in economics and finance. And yes, I was interested in it. I loved my undergraduate degree. And then I did my master's in economics. However, I did not love it enough to do a PhD. So I was actually on that path to doing a PhD in economics, but I did not love it enough to actually commit another 6 years to doing it. So I actually chose not to do my PhD and went into banking. So, but this time I did give it a lot of deep thought, that now that I want to go into medicine, do I really love it enough to put 8 years of schooling into it, 8 years of training into it? And the answer was yes, like that internal answer, right? And then that brings me to my third point, is that really go deep within yourself to ask what makes sense for me. Something we often do when we're making a big decision, we ask a lot of people about, what do you think I should do? What do you think is the right decision for me? And you ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different answers, or variations of 100 different answers, right? Because everybody will have their own journey, their own blind spots, their own filters that through which they will give you advice. And not all of it will apply to you. So pick a few people. I did not tell a lot of people that I'm thinking about going to medicine, especially because I know that this is such a big leap. You know, like, you see people who have been in other science fields go into medicine. I have friends in medical school right now who've been in different scientific fields and have chosen medicine, like nursing, for instance, or midwife or something, and then they've gone into medicine. But in my case, I was coming from a completely different world of economics and finance and banking. And I knew that it would not make sense to a lot of people. So the more people that I talk to, the more doubts it will plant in my own mind. And I may not actually end up doing it then. So I made sure to talk to very few people who I could trust 1000% with the advice that they will give me, that they knew me beyond my career and my resume. They knew me as a person. They knew the things that I was interested in. They knew the things that I was capable of. They knew my skill sets. They knew my values, and they could really be that sounding board for me. So I chose very few, like maybe 3 people that I told. One of them was my mentor, John, who is like a dad to me, and I talk about him quite often. And he, when I talked to him, the first thing he said to me, Samra, go for it. Because before I talked to him about medicine, there were times when I thought about politics. There was a time when I thought about law school. There was a time when I thought about something else. And every time I would tell him that, this is what I'm thinking, John, what do I do? And then he would say to me, okay, explain to me why. And as I would explain my reasoning to him, I would end up being, yeah, maybe not, So in convincing him, I would become unconvinced. However, for medicine, when I told him, he did not even ask me to explain. He said, this fits. This completely fits. Because he knows me and he's known me for 10 years. And I completely trusted that he would have my back and he would give me the best advice possible. So So doing something requires that thoughtfulness on your part, really going deep within yourself, asking yourself those questions, those hard questions. Do I love this enough? Am I interested in enough? Am I willing to make those sacrifices? And if I am, then what is my game plan? Like when things fall apart, when my child gets sick, when I have bills to pay, what would it look like? Map it out. You'll never know everything that's going to happen in life. Trust me, I've gone through a bunch of ups and downs during medical school that I could not ever have anticipated. However, at least there was some kind of like, yeah, I'll figure it out. It's doable. So that is important. And then talk to the people that matter to you most, people that have your best interests at heart, people that you can trust, and then people who will be affected by that decision. Like in my case, it was definitely my daughters who would be affected. So I had lots and lots of conversations with them. Um, and then there's this and while you're going through this, let's say you've made the decision and now you are in it and you are doing it. What then? What, like, it's not going to be a smooth sailing from there on. There will be times when you will question yourself. What was I thinking? What was I thinking? Why am I doing this? I had those moments almost every week, sometimes every day during medical school, multiple times a day. Like, why am I doing this again? Like, what was I thinking? Either this was a brilliant decision or it was a crazy decision. I would just be like, on the verge of calling my friends from banking and like, can you please just give me a job again? It was not easy. It's not a smooth sailing. And that is why, what I said in the beginning, you have to ask yourself those deep questions. Do I really want this enough? Is this something I'm so interested in that I want to make that career jump? Or is this something I can just do on the side as a hobby? So when you ask yourself that question and be honest with yourself and be very thoughtful about what is it that I want to do? What is that vision that I want? What is my why of doing this? For me, simple. Take the lessons that life has taught me, combine that with medical knowledge, expertise, and training to make a difference in people's lives. That is my purpose. My mission in life is to help people, help others find the light that they have within themselves. And I knew without any doubt that psychiatry and mental health and being an expert in the field is the way to do it. Because yes, I can do it as a speaker. I'm doing it as an author. I'm inspiring people. I'm helping people. However, if I combine that with the rigor of science and can actually add value at those tables in those learning spaces, it can go a much further way. So I knew that. So in those moments when I was sitting with myself during med school, racking my brain about why am I doing this, because I had talked to some of my close friends about my purpose, I would call them and they would remind me, remember, Samra, why did you decide to do this? Do you remember your purpose? Do you remember your mission? Write it down. And I would write it down. I would actually write it over and over again. I would stick it on my wall because that was my reminder. So when you are doubting yourself, your why is going to help you pull through. That why did I do this? Answer that question for yourself. This is why I did this. And yes, I'm struggling and I am falling apart right now. It's hard, but I can do this because that's the North Star. So during those moments, just because you've embarked on a path doesn't mean that path is going to be clear. Doesn't mean that there are not going to be bumps and scrapes and detours and setbacks on that path. There will be, and there absolutely have been on my road as well, and there will be in the future as well. Like I said, I'm just entering psychiatry residency at the University of Toronto, and residency is tough. It's it's timings are tough, and sometimes you're working overnight shifts and all that kind of stuff. So yes, it's going to be another few years of that kind of not sometimes having control over your time and all that, and a lot of hard work. However, having made it this far, I know that I can make it further. And I know that it means so much to me that I'm willing to put in that sacrifice. And then trusting your ability to learn, especially someone who is coming, if you're going to a completely different career like I did. um, I went in medical school without any knowledge of biology or chemistry or these big scientific words that all my medical school fellow students seem to pronounce so easily, and I could not even say them without stumbling over my own words. And it was really like that imposter syndrome was at this sky high level. Like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't know any of this. In that moment, you have to remind yourself that I learned all those things. I learned economics. I wasn't born knowing it. I learned finance. I learned banking. I learned to structure credit. I learned to do loan agreements. I learned to do all those things and I got good at it. So if I can learn those things, I can learn this too. And I did, and I'm now at the end of it. So, or at the end of med school at least. So, trusting your ability to learn. You're not going to know everything, but you can learn. If you've learned other things in the past, which we all have, you can learn something new as well. And just trusting that ability of yourself and honing that ability is really, really important. So I'm going to jump into some questions now. I know some of you submitted questions earlier, so I'm going to tackle those first. Sorry, books behind me just fell randomly. So I'm going to tackle some of those questions first, and then some of the live questions that I have as well in front of me. So somebody asked me, I want to make a change, but I feel like I'm waiting for the right moment. How did you identify the right moment to make the transition? Extremely good question. Thank you for asking that. So absolutely. When we are, the right moment, the timing is very important. For me personally, when I left my marriage, after my abusive marriage ended and I left and I was a student and I was living in poverty and I was working multiple jobs and I was trying to make ends meet and go to school and raise my kids and find a job. It was a lot, right? At that time, I was not at all ready to take on a career in medicine. Even if I was interested at that time, it wasn't even on my radar. First of all, like I hadn't developed this interest in mental health that I have now. So at that time, it was just like, I want a degree that would get me a job and that would put food on the table for my children. And that's it. So I did the next best thing to a business degree and I got a job in banking. The reason I even got a job in banking is because that RBC was the first company to offer me a job and I took it. If there was some other company that would offer it to me, I would take that. Like, it wasn't like at that time I was kind of in like survival mode, like beggars can't be choosers. So that was my mentality. So I fell into the career that I did and I made the most of it and I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot and I met some amazing people who are incredible friends to this day. So that I could not have embarked on a medicine career at that time. So for me, the right time was when I was stable enough, like I had been working in banking for about 8 years. I was now in a position where I could actually make choices that were not based on surviving, but based on what I wanted to do, based on thriving. What is the next step? So my kids are now stable. I'm not in a financial crisis. I have, bandwidth. I have gone through years and years of therapy with myself and my children to really work on myself, increase my confidence. I am in a better place emotionally. I'm in a better place mentally and personally and professionally. So what is it that I actually want to do now? I don't have to do things just because I need those things to put food on the table and to survive. Now I can actually think about things that I want to do because that's what I'm interested in. So at that time, because of my speaking and writing career and the developing interest that I had in mental health, that was the right timing for me. So even if I had found that passion before, I would not have taken that leap before because it was not the right moment. So you have to ask yourself first, is this something I'm interested in enough to take it as a career? And secondly, is it the right timing for me? Does it make sense from a practical standpoint? Right? So that is very, very important. And for me, the right time was a time that made sense for me and my family and my children. And that's another important thing. My children by that time were old enough, because when I did my first degrees in economics and I got my job at that time, my kids were like 9 years and 4 years old, or 10 and 5. By the time I graduated, they were 12 and 7. So they were quite young. And I'm a single mom and a sole support parent. So I have no help. I have no family in Canada. I have no help from anyone. So I needed to be a hands-on mom. So going into a degree like medicine and going through those years and years of training at that time would absolutely not have worked. I could not have been a mother to my kids. However, at this point in time, in 2020, when I decided, and 2021, when I started medical school, my children were, young teenagers. My younger daughter at that time was 15. My older one was 20, and I knew that, okay, now I can do this because it makes sense. They're older, they're old enough to be able to take care of themselves. I don't have to be a hands-on mom. That doesn't mean they're not my kids. Of course, they're my kids, and I love them, and I will always be there for them. But it's the nature of parenting has changed, right? The nature of parenting is no longer about making sure that I'm doing all their chores and their laundry and their cooking and everything. They can do all that themselves as well. The nature of parenting is more like, okay, we're talking all the time, we're spending quality time with each other, etc. And we made sure. So that was something I prioritized. We actually put in our calendars, because we are so busy. I was so busy with medical school. My older daughter is in university for journalism, and my younger one has her own things that she has in high school, etc. So we made sure to block family time in our calendars every single day, making sure that we're always touching base. We have a group chat that's going the whole time, and we're talking to each other about everything. We're very, very close, and we make that a priority for our family, that we are always connected, and we are always prioritizing family time and quality time whenever we could. So I could do it then because they're old enough that they're not completely dependent on me for their physical activities and whatnot. So I hope that answered your question. The next question I have is, can you describe the initial steps you took when you decided to reinvent your career? So I think I've answered this question pretty much, because, like I said, the steps were making sure that that this is something I'm interested in enough to do it as a career, and then does it make sense? And then talking to some people who I really trust and who I know that have my best interests at heart. And then making that decision. But again, it was a very thoughtful decision that took a lot of conversations with myself and with my trusted folks. In hindsight, what would you have done differently during your career transition? I don't think I could have done anything differently, to be honest, because when you're taking a leap like that, you're going into very unknown territories, and you really don't know what's going to come. I think personally, what I did do was everything that I could do. So I was lucky enough to, have my home and be able to live in it throughout medical school. I have two daughters who are incredibly supportive. We prioritize a lot of family time. I think the one thing that I could just say is maybe I would have, just be able to spend more time with them. But again, like, that was out of my control. You don't have a lot of control over your schedule when you're in med school. So, but there is really nothing I could think of off the top of my head right now that I would have done differently during my transition. But I'll keep thinking. If something pops up, I'll come back to this question. Can you share any resources or strategies that were helpful for you during your career change? So yes, I think being very clear about your financial picture is very important. So I talked to my financial planner quite a bit. I made sure, I had a budget. I had things panned out for, like, just kind of thinking about different things that can come up and making sure I had enough bandwidth for that, financially speaking. In terms of resources and strategies, so I did have to write the MCAT. So I used educational resources that I could find. And if somebody's interested in that, feel free to send me a private message, and I'm happy to share some of the tips that I did to study. And then I did write that before I applied to medical school. And just and something that I did do is also look at all the admissions criteria for the different medical schools in Canada. So I made a spreadsheet with all the schools and their criteria for admission. And because I don't have a science background, I did not have a science undergrad. There were several schools that I could not even apply to. So McMaster allows people from non-traditional pathways. So McMaster welcomes people from non-science backgrounds. So does University of Calgary. There's a couple of other schools in Canada that will accept people who do not have science undergraduate degrees. So I could only apply to those schools. So having that strategy, okay, these are the schools I'm going to apply to. These are their requirements. What do I meet? What do I not meet? What do I have to do to meet the rest of them? And then putting in my application. So make sure you do your homework. All the information that I used is all publicly available. Just go on the admissions websites of different schools. Let's say if you're considering law school, right? Go to the different programs of the universities that you're interested in. Make a spreadsheet. See what you have, what you don't have. How can you complete some of the other requirements? I know a few people actually who have decided to go into medicine much later in life, even later than I have. And they actually went back and did other undergraduate degrees to be able to meet the requirements of medical school. So there are always solutions. You just have to do your research and sort of sometimes think outside of the box, and then also think pragmatically, like, is that, if it's too big of a requirement to fulfill, like I would not go back and do another undergraduate, right? So I only applied to schools that I could apply to based on my economics undergrad. So if I was like, okay, I have to go back and do a science undergrad, I probably would not have chosen the path, because that would have just not made sense for me personally. But I know people who have done it, so hats off to them. So you have to think, okay, what are the gaps and what is feasible for me? So it's again, like I said, a personal decision. So some of the other questions that have come in. So Mohammed asks how to get a career abroad from Pakistan with minimum expenditure. I would not be the best person to answer this question, unfortunately, because I've lived pretty much all my life now in Canada. And that is something perhaps you might want to talk to an immigration lawyer or somebody who's like a career counselor for careers abroad. Like that is not something that I have the expertise to answer. I'm sorry. Sarbjeet asks, there's a comment. Trauma outbound lessons are not always encouraging. You seem to have been luckiest in the luckier. Well, thank you. Honestly, I always say trauma is not something you move on from. You actually move on with trauma. So it's not something that just goes away when your life is better. It lives within you all the time. It's there. You just learn skills to manage it and to not let it stand in the way of what you want to do. So, yes, I'm out of that situation, but that does not mean that, that it doesn't cross my mind or it doesn't affect me. It becomes part of your blueprint. And that's why I think trauma-informed mental health care is extremely important, because it's not just about, okay, she's out, it's all great. It's like, yeah, I have those bad days. I have those memories. I have those flashbacks. Something reminds me of something. When I talk to my family, it affects me. So at that time, what are the skills that I've learned through my own healing journey to make sure that I am in the present and I can still sit and take care of myself and be kind to myself and even cry if I have to, but then get back up and move on and live my life to the best of my abilities today. From Maria, I want to combine my life experience, travel mindset, and helping others up level. This is my why, but I'm having difficulty moving forward. Thank you for being so honest, Maria. And, it sounds like you have a very crystal clear sort of vision of what you want to do. And something that, you can find your why, and then you can find different ways to make that why come alive, right? So something I might offer here is think about the different careers that you can take that purpose and channel it into. So, like I said, I'm passionate about mental health. I knew that I wanted to do something in mental health. So I looked at other careers too. I looked at, what about social work? What about psychology? What about organizational psychology? What about, and I'm also very business oriented, having done previous degrees in finance and economics and then worked in banking. So I looked at, the psychology of business and other different courses like that. And eventually landed on medicine, because I really am the kind of person, if I want to do something, I want to go deep into it, and I want to kind of like study it till uh, like the max. And when somebody told me that, why don't you think about psychiatry? And I'm like, well, what medical school is going to want me? And they're like, no, there are actually schools who will take you even with your economics undergraduate degree. So I discovered McMaster, and here I am. So I'm very grateful to McMaster for opening doorways to people from those non-traditional paths like myself. So find what are the different avenues, different careers that might fulfill your purpose for you, right? And then think about, okay, what makes sense? What can I do? Like for me, when I thought about psychology, in order to be a clinical psychologist, I would have to go back and do another undergraduate degree in psychology, then do a master's, then do a PhD, and then be practicing as a psychologist. And that to me was like a really long path. Like I said, I did not want to go back and do another undergraduate degree. That was not something I was prepared for. So luckily, McMaster accepted my economics undergraduate to fulfill the prerequisites of having an undergraduate degree. McMaster just wants any undergraduate degree. So that is what helped me. And luckily, because in my undergrad, my education was always of utmost importance, and I just was very, very fixated on having the best GPA possible. So having a really high GPA, even if it was from a non-science degree, is what eventually helped me get in. So find what are the different avenues that can make your why come alive, and then be practical. And like difficulty moving forward, we all have those moments, we all have those days. In that time, instead of thinking, oh, like I have this big career to build or this big vision to fulfill, focus on the next step, on the very tiny thing you can do. What is the next thing I can do? Like when I'm focused on something, instead of thinking, oh my God, how am I going to be a psychiatrist in 8 years? And like this doesn't, it just seems like a mountain that I don't think I can climb. And then you get into, if you think like that, you get into this inertia, you feel stuck, and you can't feel move forward because it's just such a big road, it's such a big climb. So in that moment, I always tell people that focus on the very next step. What is the next thing I can do? So in my case, I knew that the next thing I can do is just study for the MCAT, write it, or put another application in. Or when I was in med school, what is the next test? Just study for that. What is this next concept that I need to understand? So that builds momentum, and then it helps you take the next step and the next step and the next step. So like any journey is just an accumulation of very little tiny moments of progress. So I hope that helps. From Zoha, I am thinking of taking the leap into a different field. However, the success rate of applications is low. How do you stay motivated and keep trying? When do you know when to give up on that path or dream? When do you know which path is right for you? So I'll answer your second question first. When do you know that which path is right for you? It's a very deep question that you have to ask yourself. What do I like? How do I feel about this? Like something I remember, I took a road trip right before I decided to go to medical school. I was battling with the same emotions, these exact same questions that you're asking right now. So I did a solo road trip for about a month, and I told my children, do not call me unless it's an emergency. And an emergency is not like I'm hungry, what do I eat? An emergency is a real emergency. So do not call me unless it's an emergency. And I just thought, okay, I'm just going to really spend time with myself, asking myself those questions, and just being in my own thoughts, and trusting my intuition. So as I went through and did a lot of soul searching, did a lot of thinking and reflecting, it became very crystal clear to me what my path is and what is right for me. So I always say, like, remove the noise around you and listen to yourself. Give yourself that time and the space to sit with yourself and ask yourself those questions and listen to your own thoughts and feelings and intuition. Because when we ask a lot of people, they give us different answers, and a lot of people will tell you, no, you can't do this. If I asked 99% of my friends right now, they would have said, if I talked to them like, a few years ago, they would have said, this is a crazy idea, what are you thinking, right? And that doesn't mean they don't love me, they do. It's just that they don't see that as a possibility sometimes. So sometimes when people tell you that you cannot do something, they don't show you your limits, they show you their limits, because they can't see themselves doing it, so they don't think you can either. And that doesn't come from a bad place, it comes from a place of love, it comes from a place of caring for you, right? They don't want you to be disappointed, they don't want you to be afraid, they don't want you to fall and fail and all those things, because they love you. However, you got to think, okay, is failure worth it? Is falling and scraping my knees worth it for me? And to me, it was. So I did make the leap. There were times when I thought about career changes before, and at that time it wasn't worth it, and I did not do it. Right. So you got to understand how badly do I want this? What will it take to make this happen? And when you do fall and when you do fail, what will it take for me to get back up? Do I care about this enough to get back up and give it one more try? I know people, some of my friends, some of my colleagues in medical school, who tried and applied and did not get in multiple times, 4 times, 5 times, and they still kept trying. And now they're doctors, right? So if you don't try, the answer is always no. If you don't get back up, you'll never be able to reach your destination. You'll never be able to reach the top of that mountain. So get back up and even take just one little step forward, one little step. And if you keep getting back up every time you fall, I promise you, you will get there. So the only time you will not get there is if you refuse to get up. So I hope that helps. From Andrea, what are some ways we can learn to trust ourselves and ability to learn new things when it comes to making a career transition and change? And that is something I touched upon briefly, and I'll touch upon it again, is that we absolutely can learn. Like something that I remind myself all the time is I was not born as an economist. I was not born as a mother. I was not born as a speaker or an author or any of the things that I do today. None of those things came with me when I was born. I learned, especially all the parents who are right now on this session. Like, how many times do we fail as parents? Literally every day, like multiple times a day, right? I have no clue what I'm doing half the time. And we still keep doing it because we love our children. We want them to be successful. We want them to feel loved. We want them to thrive, right? We still do it. And we learn as we go along. We fall and stumble and learn and keep going and keep trying new things and keep having new conversations and figure it out. So trust that ability. If you have figured out things before in your life, you have what it takes to learn something new. So reminding yourself of that, like, yes, I have in med school have so many moments where something in front of me just seems like Greek. Like, I have no idea what this means. I cannot understand. I cannot wrap my head around it. Like when I learned about kidneys, oh my God, kidneys are complicated. I do not like kidneys. It was awful. And I was like, I could never learn this. And then what I did was I grabbed a bunch of colored markers and pens, because I'm a bit of a stationery geek. So I grabbed pens of different colors, and I went to this restaurant in St. Catharines, because that was where my campus was when I was in the early stages of med school. I found this lovely, cozy Indian restaurant, got into the corner booth, and told the server, please just keep bringing me endless masala chai, because I love masala chai. So just keep bringing me endless masala chai, keep making sure that my cup is always filled. And by the way, for people who are non-desis here, masala chai is just spiced tea. It's like chai with like spices and stuff in it. It's like a South Asian chai. So it's quite strong, but it's like that caffeine that I needed. And I love chai. So I have chai right now with me. So I just said, okay, bring me masala chai. And I sat there for like a whole day just drawing the kidney over and over again and marking like each little channel of where sodium goes in and potassium goes out and what happens, and and then eventually it made sense. It made sense. By the end of the day, I'm like, oh my God, this actually makes sense to me. Whereas in the beginning of the day, that morning, I was like, there is no way kidneys are going to be the end of my med school journey, right? So you can absolutely learn. You have the skills. You have the skills to learn. You do not need to know something. You just need to know you can learn it. So, and then put in that work, put in that hard work, because there's no replacement to that. So give yourself that time and space to learn. All right. Shami says, what message would you give your kids or younger ones about not letting your past hardships determine a negative outset and use it as a springboard for change or drive to succeed? Oh, that's a whole other topic for another LinkedIn Live. So I'm going to let my wonderful social media manager, Andrea, make note of that, because that is definitely something we can take up on a future session. And in a very short answer, though, I would say that we cannot control what happens to us a lot of the times. We just can't, right? I was forced into a marriage when I was 16. I went through a lot of abuse. I could not have controlled any of that. I could not have changed any of that. So what we can control, however, is our response to our circumstances. And that response is what determines our outcome. So if you keep that equation in mind, that your outcome is equal to your circumstances times your response, right? So your response is where your power lies. So if you think, okay, this is it, this is my destiny, there's nothing I can change about this, there's nothing that will change. However, if you think, yes, this happened to me and it's awful, here's something I can do. Here's a tiny little thing I can do. And that tiny step, like if imagine a straight line, right? And you just rotate a tiny step like that. And now your destination later on looks very different than it would have looked before. So having that mindset that what can I do? What is a tiny step that I can take right now? And that is what courage is. That is what resilience is. It's not an ingredient someone has or doesn't have. It's something you build. It's a muscle. It's an emotional muscle that you do by, let's call it like your emotional gym. You know, each time you take another step forward, each time you practice a tiny moment of courage or resilience, the next one becomes a little bit easier and easier and easier and doable or bigger. So your response is where your power lies. Amanda is asking, hi, Samra, you're such an inspiration. Thank you. Congratulations on your upcoming graduation. Do you mind sharing how you studied for your MCAT? So I actually just did a lot of practice questions. So I wrote the critical analysis and reasoning section of the MCAT, which is what McMaster looks at. So when I did that, I got a ton of practice passages. So it's passages. It's like you read passages and then you answer these questions that are based off of those passages. So I just bought as many of those practice passages that I could, and just locked myself in my room for 3 weeks and just kept doing like 20 or 30 a day. And that is ultimately just kind of became second nature, and I did it. Now, the thing that I will say, however, is that if you're studying for the whole MCAT, which is like all the science sections as well, you probably need a whole year to do it, because unless you have like a really strong science background, which I did not, if you have a very, very strong background in science, then you might need shorter timeframes. But I think giving yourself a strategy, making a plan, and then also sticking to it and being consistent, because sometimes we tend to we'll do so many questions in one day and then a week we won't do anything and then we'll forget. So right now I'm studying for my licensing exam, and I'm doing the same thing, is that making sure I'm doing at least 20 to 50 questions every single day for a month, and my exam is in a month from now. So hopefully that will be enough. And if it's not, then try again. There's no shame in failure. There's no shame in setbacks. You just gotta get back up and try again and keep trying. Okay, so I think that is it in terms of questions. Um, and we are at the end of the hour. So thank you so much for joining today. This has been an absolute delight. I just realized how much I missed doing these sessions. So we will keep going and we will keep doing these on a regular basis. Thank you for joining. Thank you for all of your engagement. Thank you for your comments and your questions. If there's something you did not ask, please feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever social media you use, and we'll keep track of it. Also, if you have ideas and for future topics of these conversations, please send them to us because that is going to, I want to make these as valuable for all of you as possible. So, what do you want me to talk about? What do you want me to take up? What do you want to learn? And what do you want to share? Right? Because I'm learning here as much as you are. So, thank you so much for joining, and have yourself a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.